Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man who's recording this episode from inside a barn and he's hiding behind some haystacks. It's David Cross.
Turns out I'm allergic to straw. Oh no, Jason.
So you and we've talked a lot of Friday the 13th. We've done
hmm
episodes about which Friday the 13th movie is the most Friday the 13th. I've I've had to do assignments for Rotten Tomatoes. I've had to write assignments for film theory. I proved that Jason doesn't teleport. And then I had to do, let's see, I did a one for fandom where I counted every single one of his kills when everybody runs away from him. So you and I talk a lot about these movies. Like we were messaging nonstop to each other when we were trying to figure out the best or the most Friday the 13th film. So I was like, I got to bring David back. I got to bring
Oh,
David in here, and he has got to summarize the Friday the 13th franchise in a relatively like not like a short period of time, but like not in a 3 hour period. You know what I mean? Like you have some time, but I'm just looking forward to hearing you talk about this franchise. And also for people who haven't listened to our past episodes, David, tell me about your love of this franchise.
yeah, I fell in love with this franchise very early on. I probably dressed up as Jason Voorhees 3 or 4 times on Halloween from a very young age. I should I get this out there? I started watching horror movies when I was like 5 or 6, way too young. And this was always on TV, one of these. So it was just always in the back of my mind. And then additionally, my father sometimes would dress up like Jason Voorhees with a mask, and we would chase him around the yard, shooting him with crossbows. Like not a real crossbow, I had a sucker at the end of the arrow, but like
That's amazing.
Jason's been in my life for a very long time. And I've
Oh,
always just sort of had a kindred spirit to it. And another thing I guess I should throw in there, I was a Boy Scout, Mark. I don't think that would surprise you. So I spent a lot of time outdoors. And this series, more than say Nightmare on Elm Street, just scared me more because I was more familiar with the background of like the
oh,
setting.
that's
Yeah,
interesting.
so it creeped me out a lot. And I also spent a lot of time in the woods at a cabin my grandparents owned. So lots of wood talk. I was latchkey kid, but in the middle of Kentucky and Ohio.
You know what's interesting? And you and I have also talked about Ernest Scared Stupid a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when Ernest Scared Stupid, that movie, they're in the woods. There's kids skateboarding. There's like just open fields and sort of feral kids in the '90s like that. I could relate to that. And I guess watching the Friday the 13th movies too, it's just all wooded. So if you hike a lot and you're out there a lot and you're a Boy Scout, yeah, I could definitely see how you relate to this and not like a Friday the 13th movie, which is quite claustrophobic for a Child's Play, which is smaller as well, or a Halloween. So yeah, and also kids are attacked in this franchise too. So when you get to Corey Feldman and stuff like that, so I mean, there is more to relate it to kids growing up, I guess.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. And what we're talking about, sort of like what goes behind this series, I was thinking a lot and had this podcast was like, what makes Friday the 13th have so much staying power? And for me, it came down to really like the first five, all the wooded ones, before Manhattan, before space, all those things. And it was that you had a lot of young, inexperienced people in the woods, wearing clothing that isn't protecting them from the elements, being chased by an unstoppable force. It's very archetypal. Like they're in the dark, all that. So that's sort of what I think is like hits at our ape brains of why we keep coming back to this series over and over. It's like, oh, this is really terrifying. I would say if it's done correctly. There's some later ones in this series that I enjoy, but I'm not a fan of.
and listen, I don't think they get as cruel as say the Friday the 13th movie, or I'm sorry, as the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, or Halloween 2 is really mean. Like these ones are very cheeky. The acting is kind of suspect. It's very, like the special effects are almost charming in a way because they're so lo-fi, but they look great, and you could just see people using every cent of the budget on it. And also Jason as a character, Jason is not complicated, right? There's no Freddy, there's no deep backstory about Freddy and how he was born, or Michael Myers being in a cult. Like it's just Jason. Like he lives on the bottom of a lake for years. You let him loose, he kills you. It might be his mom, and he might have a sack on his head. Like he might be in space, he might go to hell, but it's just Jason. And so I think it's almost a cozy horror franchise because
I don't know.
Well,
I'm gonna. Where do you go? Where are you gonna go with this one?
well, think about it. Think about, all right. So Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, so I just had to watch Dream Warriors. And so I have an article coming out for the Ringer about which year has the best horror movie starting in five. So it went through Dream Warriors again. That's a harrowing film.
Mm-hmm.
It's not cozy. But then you watch Jason Lives and it's fun. Like it's cheeky. You watch like these kills in this franchise, they're not, I don't know, they're not crazy. I don't know. They're more cheeky than any, at least for me. And also too, I love watching the final girls at the end, for lack of a better term, finding their inner strength and taking out Jason. Like I think it's scrappier, as Adam Clement would say, it's more blue collar. And for me, it has more of a cozier vibe. I don't know. I could cozy watch this, but I could never just sit down and watch the Halloween movies and cozy watch them, or Nightmare on Elm Street, or Paranormal Activity. Like there's no cozy. Like I don't know. You don't get too stressed out. There's no evil. You never feel totally dirty. I mean, there's a lot of gratuity in here, but it's never. I don't know. That's just my thing about this
Mm-hmm.
franchise. Maybe I'm using the wrong word, but it's just the easiest franchise to watch, I would say.
Yeah, it is very much easier to swallow than again Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street by far for me. Um,
And
I
listen,
wanted.
there's more emotion for me in the final minutes of Insidious 5 than there is in the entirety of the Friday the 13th franchise. But I don't know, I like that for it. I don't know, I like how yeah, like you just watch it with your lizard brain and that's it. So that's just the way I feel.
Mark, can you do that again? Right when you started, there was a loud beep, and I don't know if you could hear
Oh,
it, but
no.
I wanted to make sure we caught that thought.
Oh, where should I start?
It's a great question. You were like, you literally was the beginning of the
I'll
sentence.
just use the beep. It's all good. But yeah, so we've talked. Yeah, we could wax poetic about this thing for hours, but I want to hear you summarize this in quote unquote a few minutes. So what do you got for me, David?
Oh, hold on. I gotta stretch, do my vocal. La 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 la. Just for everyone's audience out there, I did do a little bit of a test, and I can do it short, but not super short. So we'll see how this goes.
Oh
All
man,
right.
I love that
And
you tested it. That makes me so happy.
and Mark, if you want to stop me with questions as we go, feel free. Feel free.
I like it.
Okay. So let's get into this. The year is 1950 something, and a boy named Jason Voorhees drowns at Camp Crystal Lake. 20 something years later, a guy named Steve is opening up Camp Crystal Lake again because it had closed in the meantime, and a bunch of counselors start getting picked off by an unknown killer one by one, including Kevin Bacon. And what's probably the best scene of the movie, gets an arrow through the neck from underneath. So at the end of the movie, it's this woman, Alice, being chased by the killer, and the killer turns out to be Pamela Voorhees. And Pamela Voorhees is the mother of Jason, the boy who drowns. At the end of the fight, Allison whacks her head off with a machete. That is the end of the first movie. We have our first final girl of this series. Friday the 13th, part two. 2 months later, Alice is in her, I guess, apartment. She opens up her refrigerator to get some cat food for her cat. And there's Pamela Voorhees' severed head sitting in the refrigerator. She turns around and she's killed by an unknown assailant. Yeah, pretty wild, right?
She
So,
did so good surviving the first film, and then she gets fridged.
yeah, literally. Also, I wanted to say, like, we're gonna go as fast, but like, Jason has a sense of humor. Like,
Yeah,
because why would he put that head in the refrigerator? Because that's absurd, right? Right? He's like,
and during this time there's cat noises and there's so many little coincidences that need to happen to get her looking in that refrigerator. It's just beautiful. Like it's he could have killed her 1,000 times, but instead he just wanted her to look in the fridge and see his mom's head. Oh, and see someone's head.
yeah, he's just like setting stuff up. It's instead of being like Jigsaw, he's just there for the one moment, the gotcha. Like, all right, I'll lock this door so they have to go this way. Oh, there's a body.
Oh, and listen, Pam Voorhees, she's a beast, dude. She's
She's a
a
tank. She's a tank. In the
great
first movie,
sweater.
she gets beat up so much, just absolutely
Yes.
slammed so much, and she keeps getting up. And it's a precursor to the rest of the series. That is one thing that sticks around. You can't keep a Voorhees down unless you behead them.
Oh yeah, she's like she gets knocked out, she gets dragged down. Like she's a tough one, that Miss Voorhees.
Yeah. So let's go back to two, right? We're back at Camp Crystal Lake. It's opening again, and there's more counselors. They're being trained, and they're being picked off by an unknown assailant. with a bag over their head. Guess what? That turns out to be Jason Voorhees, the titular character, the character that follows through all of these movies. One, I thought he drowned as a little kid. Doesn't make any sense. Don't worry about it. That's his entire series. Just don't worry about it. But there are two things that maybe say he came back, right? So one, he did drown. I mean, he did drown, and then he saw his mother get killed, and he came back as like some demon thing. Or he never drowned at all and hung out in the woods. And then he saw his mother die and went mad and decided to kill everyone who came near Crystal Lake.
Which one do you think it is?
I really think it's the supernatural one. Like I want it to be the supernatural one. But they never say which way it is.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
I just like the idea of him hanging out in the woods and watching his mom go crazy. Like the whole time he could have been like, "Hey mom, I'm still alive." And they could have had a semblance of a life. But instead he just watched her, and then his mom goes and kills everyone. And he's like, "You know what? I'm gonna get revenge on the innocent campers who killed my mom when she tried to kill them." And then yeah, that's what I just want him loitering in the woods for decades. That's my
Just
thing.
staring. Just
Yeah. I love
what a
some good
creep.
loitering. Yeah. and selling weed, becoming a weed farmer.
Well,
Wait,
that
that
comes up.
yeah.
But at end of two, Jason goes up against Jenny, and Jenny's a smart woman, and she puts on Pamela Voorhees' sweater
Mm.
and tricks Jason into thinking that she is his mother. And while he's distracted, hits her with a machete. Good for her. One of the better final girls in the series.
Smart. Mind
Very
games.
smart. Very
Industrious.
smart. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The thing is, Jason's body, guess what? It's not recovered. That's because he's not dead. He never dies. Part 3.
Real quick, what do you feel about all the gratuitous nudity in 2? Because 2 goes so hard.
Does 2 go hard? I mean, 2 does go hard. You're right. There's the swimming scene is pretty. I think it's less than 5, and 5's the one where I'm like, this is way too much for me.
2 this well, I know when I call it cozy, but this is such a gratuitous little franchise.
Yeah, it knows what it is. It's like
Yeah.
they like nudity, titillation, murder, Jason doing gags, basically. And when it gets farther up in the series.
Mm.
Part 3. So this picks up immediately after part 2. And guess what? It is in 3D. Right. And I never seen it in 3D, but the normal version, you could definitely tell it's in 3D. Because there's things coming at the screen, even when you're just like watching it regularly. Jason's injured and he hangs out in a barn to recover. But it's Jason, right? He can't hang out anywhere. He just starts murdering biker gangs and kids. Because like it's just chill, dude.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, the poor biker gang.
Yeah, they were a good addition to it. And it's the 80s. There's always a biker gang or a punk gang somewhere.
Switchblade.
Jason finds his hockey mask in this one, and so he doesn't have a sack, and that becomes the trademark look for the rest of the series and going farther. But he hacks and slashes his way through a bunch of teens, and at the end of the movie, a woman named Chris puts a rope around his neck, pushes him out of a barn, and hangs him. That's it. He is dead. That is the end of the Friday the 13th franchise. But he's not, because there's like 7 more movies.
Chris is the beast, by the way.
He is. Chris is great, very smart. One of the things I want to note about the third movie, and I think it gets a little bit of hate, like I think it's generally like the bottom tier. People think it's the bottom tier. I really love this movie because I think it plays on the first 2 movies and your expectations. So, there's the killer point of view in the first and second movie. And the third one, obviously there's POV, but they play with you. So they'll have shots in there where like, oh, this is Jason and this character is going to die, but then they don't. So you never really know like where he's at and if the death is actually going to happen. And I think that is an underrated quality of this film.
And I love that 80, 81, 82, 3 movies were made. Like these things are being churned out. And they're still having fun and evolving the character. So at least you're moving the franchise forward pretty quickly and reactively. But yeah, no, they're still finding freshness with 3, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So
and Steve Miner directed it, the guy from Halloween H2O and Lake Placid.
I did not realize that. So Jason's finally dead, right? He's hung to death. He's not dead. Guess what? We're at the final chapter, which is not the final chapter, an ongoing thing in this franchise. So Jason's at the morgue. He wakes up. He kills a bunch of people, and he makes his way back towards Camp Crystal Lake. And I my memory's a little hazy here, but I believe he was at Higgins Cove, which is on Crystal Lake or near Crystal Lake. I'm not actually sure. And what he ends up doing is kills a bunch of teens who are partying, including putting a corkscrew through. Oh my god, he was in
Crispin
Willard.
Glover.
Crispin Glover's face. Crispin Glover does a really funny, weird dance in that movie. Totally worth checking out. This is probably like the highest point in the franchise, the final chapter, the fourth one. It's not my favorite, but I think it is like top tier Jason. And that's because we meet two characters I think are pretty cool. We meet Trish and we meet Tommy Jarvis. Remember
Mm-hmm.
that name. Tommy Jarvis is really important to the franchise. At this point, Trish is a teen. Tommy's a young boy who's really into special effects and makeup artists. And at the end of the movie, Tommy dresses up like drowning Jason, distracts him, and then basically he gets knocked over. And then Tommy just goes at Jason with a machete, yelling, die, die, die over and over again. It's really disturbing. And it's an indication that Tommy has gone off the deep end from all the trauma he's suffered because of Jason.
It's like
Yeah.
Halloween, but not with
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Later on.
Yeah, with Rachel Harris. So they borrowed some of that
Yeah.
from
And
Tommy.
now we should say that Tommy is played by one of the Coreys, Corey Feldman.
Corey Feldman, yeah.
Corey Feldman. Yeah, very young Corey Feldman, but I think this is pre-Goonies. Okay. So he's actually dead this time. He is actually dead. His hand gets split open, some great, disgusting gore. Love it. And we go to a new beginning. Instead of following Jason, we're following Tommy. And Tommy's now a teen and he's at a halfway house because he has a lot of mental problems from the trauma. And he's at this house, and one of the fellow patients kills a third patient. And an EMT comes on and picks up the body, and the murderer is sent off to jail. But subsequently, the remainder of the people in the house are murdered, and their neighbors are murdered. And people point to Tommy, but also like what's happening because Jason's dead. They're not really sure. At the end of the movie, Tommy knocks Jason impersonator into a thresher, killing him. And then we find out that the killer is Roy. Roy is the EMT who picked up the original boy who died at the house. It turns out that Roy is that boy's father, and he just went mad and took his revenge out on everyone in the area. Typically, this is one of the least liked Friday the 13th movies, right?
Yeah, it's just Roy. Like it's quite violent, and I don't know. It's not really necessary, but you still got to watch it.
Yeah, it's not necessary, and it's super exploitative. This one, there's a lot of nudity,
Yeah, yeah.
But there is a moment that's really funny, and there's a goth girl who starts voguing before she's killed, and it's great.
I'm telling you, man, this is a scrappy little blue collar franchise.
It just plows through it. It knows what it is, and I think it's interesting that it evolves. That's one of the things that it keeps trying to do. It's like, okay, this formula's not working. It's not working. Okay, we'll try something else. That'll take us to the next level. And those formulas sometimes work, and then sometimes they don't. So,
we're getting to my favorite.
We're getting to the good stuff, right? So Jason's been killed. Roy's been killed. Tommy's still hanging around.
Pamela's still dead.
Pamela's still dead. You know, that would be quite a turn if Pamela comes back to life, actually. Like mother-daughter killing pair could be good. The next one is Jason Lives. And Tommy is now a young man, and he's having visions and nightmares from Jason. He's really screwed up. And he goes to Jason's grave to get catharsis. He digs that grave up to see if he's there, and Jason is there. He's in his hockey mask. And he's just Jason. Like, why would you bury Jason in his hockey mask? It makes no sense, but it leads to a cool scene. Tommy yanks off a iron cord, a metal cord, and just jabs that corpse over and over and over again. And then in some Frankenstein craziness, that metal gets hit by lightning, and Jason comes back to life. You now have zombie Jason. This is the beginning of the zombie Jason series.
Yes.
Mark, what
Yes.
do you think about the decision to bring Jason back as a zombie?
It's hilarious. I mean, like, listen, imagine writing that. How do we bring Jason back? We got rid of Roy. We got rid of Pamela. Jason's dead. Well, let's just have someone stab him in his grave and then he gets hit by lightning by a metal pole or piece of rebar that's inside of him. Sold. Let's go.
So yeah, they didn't think
Cash a check.
anything of it, right? Nothing. They're just like, he's back. And
Yeah.
that's kind of his entire series. It's just like, don't think too hard. He's just back. If something happens to him, don't worry. He's back.
But at least they tried, right? Like they just went, you know what? Let's dedicate the entire beginning to bringing him back, and then he's just hit by lightning, and it's incredible.
Yeah, this is a fun one. This is one of the fun ones. It starts leaning into camp way harder than the other ones.
There's a triple
But
decapitation.
that's exactly what I was going to say. So Jason has to make his way back from the graveyard to his stomping grounds at Camp Crystal Lake, and along the way he sees three people who are in a row, and he cuts their head off in one swing. Triple decapitation. Really, really funny stuff. But eventually Tommy joins up with the wife or the daughter of a sheriff, and they confront Jason. And Tommy puts a chain around Jason's neck that's attached to a boulder, and then they shove him into Crystal Lake, and he sinks to the bottom. He's not dead. He's waiting, but for now, he's been trapped in the lake.
Tommy knows how to tie a great chain knot
Yeah, yeah,
around the boulder. Like Jason, whatever Tommy did was so good that Jason's just stuck down there, and it's beautiful.
yeah. But how? I would think that Jason would be able to get that off his neck is the thing, right? Like
He's not the sharpest tool.
he's
Maybe,
not super smart. That's true.
maybe he was just like, listen, you got me on this one. I'm gonna hang out for a while and I'll be back.
I'll take a nap.
Yeah,
I could be worse.
yeah. I'll come get you later.
And for me, unfortunately, this is the end of the Tommy Jarvis like trilogy. Right, he's
Mm-hmm.
not in the series from now on, but I really think he should have been. It would have been great to follow him, trying to be basically stop Jason multiple times. But yeah, goodbye, Tommy. It was nice knowing you,
Thanks for the
and
fish.
thanks for the fish. And now, Mark, we move into what is quintessentially the most Friday the 13th movie of all the Friday the 13th movies. We found that out through data. And that is Friday the 13th, The New Blood.
Oh man.
So this is a great one because it is essentially Firestarter meets Friday the 13th. Except there's not a person who can start fires with their mind. There's someone who has telekinesis powers. Or maybe it's Carrie meets Friday the 13th.
Both.
Either way, it's some type of Stephen King meets Friday the 13th.
Oh,
This one takes actually a little bit of setup because like all the other ones, like Jason just kills. But this one we have some backstory with Tina, and Tina's the main character. Tina, as a child at Crystal Lake, accidentally killed her alcoholic father using her brain power. Flash forward 7 years, and she's back at the lake trying to get catharsis. And then she accidentally releases Jason using her brain powers. I know. And then we have a very wet Jason Voorhees wandering around, killing people at Camp Crystal Lake. And what's really fun about this is that it comes down to Tina versus Jason, and Tina just goes ham on him with all her mind powers, and he
he's
just
like
keeps getting up.
he's like a pinball in a pinball machine bouncing around
Yes.
everywhere.
Yeah, he just gets lit up. My favorite scene is when Tina causes a power wire to drop in a puddle and electrocute him. And it's so funny. It's great. And the makeup is really good when he has his mask off. Like across
Yeah.
the board, this is a very solid, good Friday the 13th movie. It's probably better than Jason Lives, I think.
Oof, I'm a Jason Liveser.
Yeah, it's good. They're both really good. That's for me. It's really hard to say when the series jumped the shark because I'm like, oh,
Never.
Never.
I love how scrappy this so for me this franchise is so scrappy and like it's
Yeah.
always been low budget, right? And it's always been reactive. So I feel like to jump the shark, you have to have been really good and then lose it. I think this franchise is just plugged forward. Like I don't think
They're like, we need some more money.
yeah,
Put Jason, I don't know, put him on the water.
yeah. Like Jason, was never in a position to jump a shark. So it couldn't. Like it just like does that make sense? Like Happy Days was a phenomenon. And then you jump the shark and the show's not cool anymore. This franchise was never cool. It was always scrappy and weird and gratuitous. So the more weird and gratuitous and weird and spacey and helly, it just made me smile. Hey, can we talk about
Um,
how Jason gets taken down in this one though? I know you're getting there, but it just makes me very happy.
yeah, it's great. I love it. I'm like, does it make sense? But again, with this series, never ask the question, does it make sense?
No.
You're not supposed to.
Hmm.
It needs to make like surface level sense, and that's it. But Tina really beats up Jason and wears herself out, and she ends up on a dock, and Jason is about to kill her. And using the last of her brain power, Tina summons the ghost of her dead father, who jumps out of the lake holding Tommy Jarvis's chain, puts it around Jason, and drags him back into the lake. Jason's returned to where he came from.
Well, I guess she gets catharsis because her alcoholic dad helps her.
Yeah, yeah. I think vaguely the movie makes sense in terms of like emotionally, like plot. Just write it. Just don't worry about it.
Just let it happen.
Just
It's
let it
beautiful.
happen.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like every time I watch these. Like when I get like the first one and the second one, and like all the way up through fourth one, I just like there is some like semblance of a plot, sort of, but then you just let it go.
Hmm.
Like just let it wash over you. Watch the teens run around. So now we've come to Jason Takes Manhattan, and I got to stop here, Mark. Jason Take Manhattan was one of my favorites as a kid because it was on TV a lot, and
Mm.
it's funny and like not. It's probably not as funny as Jason Lives, but it's still really funny. And it was because it was playing on USA Today all the time. I watched it all the time.
Head
So
gets
this
punched
one,
off.
yeah, exactly. Julius's head gets punched off. This one makes even less sense than even the other ones, and I gotta lay this out. So at the beginning of the movie, there are a bunch of high schoolers who've just graduated, and they are going on a trip to New York City on a boat that's leaving from Camp Crystal Lake. Camp Crystal Lake is a lake. How are they going to get there on a boat?
Can,
Don't
can
worry about it.
can you talk about the boat too?
The boat is huge. This boat,
It's a
like it,
liner.
yeah. From the outside, it looks small, but on the inside, there's rooms and rooms and rooms, and everyone just has their own room and can do whatever they want in it. Uh, there's like a ballroom with disco. Uh, there's a sauna. I think there's a workout facility as well. Like it does. It's a Doctor Who thing where it's way bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. uh,
Like there's
but what's
you can go down below and thrash on your guitar and no one even hears it. Like that's how big this boat is.
yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But what's interesting about this one, before we actually dive into it, I guess, it was really marketed as Jason is going to Manhattan, right? And there's maybe like 10 minutes of him in Manhattan, like one scene. They're really in Vancouver.
Because it's too expensive. It was too
Yeah,
expensive to go
yeah.
shoot there, so they just had him in Times Square, right? And that was it.
Yeah, they had him in Times Square, and that was literally it. And that's probably where the entire budget for the whole movie went. Because this movie does look not as good as New Blood.
No, but it does
No.
feature some great kills though. Like remember when the guy's on top of the boat and then Jason catches him when he's climbing up the pole? Like there's some fun moments in this flick.
But the general thing is like Jason starts killing the people on the boat. They get to New York City. Jason gets in a fist fight with an athlete who's a boxer who tires himself out punching him. And the guy's basically like, take your best shot. And Jason punches his head off and it falls into a dumpster. I used to go wild at that scene when I was a kid. Like we would try to like time it if we knew it was gonna be on, that we would be able to see that scene. Really fun. Unfortunately, the ending's very odd, Mark. I don't
He
quite get it. Maybe you can help me.
he melts into like his child form,
Yeah.
right?
So Rennie is
Acid
our. I don't know if it's acid. It might just be like wastewater. But
wastewater reverts him back to his child form when Rennie tricks him.
yeah, so like Rennie, or they're in the sewer and they basically flood him away, and he turns into a young child, but not a baby, but like a 10-year-old, I guess 9-year-old. I do not understand the end of this movie,
No
like
one
at
does.
all, because at the end, yeah, I just ignore it really because I
Yeah.
don't I don't wish I had more to tell you, but unless she is seeing Jason internally is going through, I just don't get it.
Oh, because she started having visions.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, maybe she's just seen something. Because I don't know how wastewater would turn Jason back to a child. Well, I kind of hope
You'd
it does.
so you can start over again.
Well, just it would be so dumb but hilarious. Like what happened to Jason? Well, wastewater turned him back to a child. What? Just let it happen. Just let it
Just
go.
let it happen. That's
Yeah.
this whole series. Just let it happen. We need money. I do want to mention something. I lived in New York for a decade, And in a lot of movies, they show New York with a ton of alleyways, including this one. There are no alleyways in New York. I'm exaggerating. I know of two. I know of two, and they were always had people film shooting in them because I worked next to one, and then I lived next to one, and I saw like the Arrowverse shoot there all the time. But otherwise, there are no alleys in New York. Just get that to your head.
It was like the MCU, right? They just filmed in any alley, like the same alley over and over.
Yeah, there's like very few alleys, and they're basically movie props at this point. Yeah, yeah. I didn't see the MCU. I saw
Oh,
Gotham City
oh,
filming
Gotham.
at one of the alleyways I lived near.
Got
And it
it.
was a really cool alleyway. They had it blocked off in a sign that said you can't film here without permission and all this stuff. Because people would try to sneak in and film.
I would just build an alley if I was a landlord there.
Yeah,
If I had land, I would make an alley
just make a single alley.
and surround it with buildings. Like, what'd you build that for? Just wait. And then, like,
Yeah.
location scouts start
And
sniffing around.
what's funny about that alley, it's also next to a bridge that was in The Irishman, and that's the bridge where they threw all the guns off into the water. So I
Ooh.
had when I lived in New York, I was always like, there's always like small sets and things happening around where I lived, and I would get really annoyed because it's like, I want to get home, get out of my way. I want to go home.
I'm walking here.
That's very true. But yeah, I don't understand the end of this movie. For me, this is probably, now that I'm an adult, it's where it sort of jumped the shark for me because it didn't fulfill on its promise of Jason in New York. I wanted to see him running around New York. We got one scene. Uh
But that's the entire budget.
yeah, that was the entire budget, and that's how they made it.
The most
So
of it's on a
now,
boat, a giant boat.
well, Jason on a boat's a good idea, I think. Jason New York also is a good idea, but it feels like they were like Jason on a boat for 95% of the time because it's cheap, and then Jason in New York.
I would have called this Jason Goes to New York. So that doesn't, you never know how long he's going to be there.
Jason vacations in New York.
Yeah. The
Hangs out in
journey.
Central Park and
Yeah.
he's like, this is where I kill people now.
Wait, Jason goes to hell. Jason goes to Manhattan. Hey, there it is. It battles Ernest.
Brett battles aren't you can't, like, Ernest and Jason fighting each other. Ernest would win, like, because Ernest can't be defeated.
Nope.
Like, he's all the things that happened to him, but he's probably taken way more punishment than Jason.
And he has magic helping him.
Yeah. Yeah, this is not even a bit. This is not a bit. This is just what I truly believe. If those two were in a room together, Jason would get stomped. And it'd be like an accident too.
Oh, yeah. He would never win on purpose. Like, he's not a violent guy. Like, he wins by kissing a troll at one point. So he's going to take out Jason in a kind way, or he might just become buds with him and then they'd clean schools together.
Okay. All right. We're going to jump back into this with Jason Goes to Hell, which I was super stoked for when it came out, right? I was so excited because Jason's back. And this also takes, there's more plot in this one than the other movies. I got to set this up. it's very convoluted. So you remember how Jason turned into a baby? Don't worry about it. He's back at Camp Crystal Lake as an adult killing people. How? Why? Doesn't explain it. Doesn't explain it at all. He's just there. He gets blown up by a SWAT team. And by blown up, I mean blown to pieces. And his body is taken to a morgue. And the mortician picks up his heart and eats it. And he turns in to Jason. And what we find out is that Jason, according to this movie, can hop into different bodies if he wants. And that he has to get to the body of another Voorhees in order to get back to full strength. And he has a sister, a niece, and a grandniece. And so the whole thing is about Jason trying to track them down so he can get his full strength back. But that's not all, guys. Gals. There's also a magic knife that if a Voorhees uses it to kill Jason, will send him to hell. Super convoluted plot. There's also Creighton Duke, who had a chance to be like the coolest bounty hunter ever, and he gets taken out in the lamest way.
Yeah, and Steven's the hero. Steven like spears Jason through a window and battles him on a playground. And like, I like Steve. Remember when Steven does that little trick with the handcuffs? Like, he's the unsung hero of this movie.
Yeah. It should be Tommy Jarvis.
Yeah.
It should be Tommy Jarvis. I felt like they set this movie up that was going to be Tommy. And then they were like, we already had Tommy have his happy ending. Like let's let him go. And then it's Steven, who is the baby daddy of Jessica, Jason's grand niece. or niece, period. But at the end, Jason takes over the dead body of his sister, becoming fully Jason again, and having his hockey mask. Again, the magical hockey mask that just shows up. And Jessica kills him with the knife, and he's sucked into hell by like CGI ghost hands. I don't know how to describe it. And I literally watched this movie like yesterday. And at the end of the movie, Jason's mask's left, and a hand shoots up, and it's Freddy's, grabs the mask and pulls it down to hell. I can't tell you how, when I first saw this movie how much I lost my mind when I saw that.
It was awesome, and it
Because
was
that's
so.
what everyone wanted.
And then you create that world, and yeah, and I love that Jason just has his mask at the end. It makes no sense. It's magic. We're pure magic by this point.
Yeah, and it's hinted at that he is a Deadite from the Evil Dead series because the Necronomicons
Oh
in the
yeah,
movie.
there
Yeah,
is the Necronomicon.
yeah, and it's just weird. And what I will say about this movie though, it feels like a fanfic movie more than a Friday the 13th movie. And it strays away from generally like the things that I think work best in this movie, in this franchise, is like when he's in the woods stalking people. Here he just is following them and chasing them, but it's one person. So it didn't quite ring true for me. And it feels like kind of an action movie with a little bit of horror in it. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about this film. I'll
There's a
be
lot of
honest with you.
prisons. There's a lot of kitchen fights. Like it's just not. It's more claustrophobic. It doesn't feel as open as the other ones, and just not seeing Jason, just having it be other people. They're more like zombie esque. Yeah, but I still like Steven. I still like when he spears Jason through a window and battles him on a playground.
The thing that Jason did, no, not Jason, that Steven did that it goes untalked about, unheralded, Mark. He's in, oh, you just mentioned the handcuff things. That's what you meant. When he
Yeah,
jumped over the handcuffs. Yeah, the handcuffs are behind his back. He jumps up and pulls them up in front. And like, he shouldn't be able to do that as a character. But this movie doesn't care.
he's a very athletic guy.
Yeah.
When he
I mean,
does that, you're like,
he has a
whoa.
jacket on and Harry
Yeah,
Potter glasses.
that's very. Yeah, when he has a Letterman jacket, but when he jumps those handcuffs, you go, oh, all right, I like this guy. Let's go.
So yeah, I was really excited for this movie. And then we had to wait what felt like forever to actually get Freddy vs. Jason because it came out in 2002, 2003. Yeah. And so that would have been maybe not as long as I think it had been. It just felt
Decade.
like it took forever. It was a decade of
Yeah, 93 was goes to hell.
wow, I thought it was later than that.
Yeah, so 93, and then X is 01, 2001.
Got it. Okay.
X
I
gonna give
chose
it to you.
I chose to do this in chronological order. So we're not there yet.
Oh.
So
Sorry.
in chronology, next up is Freddy vs. Jason. Again, more backstory than any like we're used to. Essentially, Freddy, who's a dream demon, scares people in their dreams and then eats their souls and gets stronger. And he has to do it with certain kids. That what's the name of his town?
Ooh, Haddonfield?
That's
No.
no, that's Halloween.
He's all right. So what the Elm Street kids?
Yeah, we'll just say the Elm Street kids.
Well, all right, yeah. So you keep going, I'll figure it out.
So he has to like scare the Elm Street kids so he can steal their soul and stay relevant and keep living. Anyway, people forgot him. And he comes up with this idea of he's going to wake up Jason and send him to his town so he can start murdering people. And then they'll remember Freddy. And when they remember him, he'll get his power back and he can slowly take over and do all the things he does in all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
Ohio, by the way. The movie's Elm Street in Springwood, Ohio.
Yeah. Okay. I think Jason at one point was also in Ohio. It jumped around. But what ends up happening is Jason's too good at his job. He doesn't let the kids sleep. He just kills them. And Freddy gets mad. There's a fight. Freddy wins. It's in the dream world. Of course, Freddy wins. And at the climax, a woman named Lori, who's our protagonist, pulls Freddy from the dream world into the real world. And then there's like a 30 to 40-minute fight between Freddy and Jason that makes the movie completely. It's what's worth watching. They beat the crap out of each other, basically kill each other, and then Lori beheads Freddy. ending the nightmare for both of them.
Mm. And it's a fun fight.
It is. There's like there's a moment, there's like a pinball moment,
Yeah.
right? No,
Yeah.
that's in the dream world when Freddy bounces Jason across a bunch of stuff.
He
It's
definitely
really
gets
funny.
pinballed. And also I like Lori too as a hero. Like she keeps plugging along. I dig her.
Mhm. Yeah. I would say this movie is very early 2000s
It's
to
my
its
least favorite of
detriment.
all of them.
It's probably not my least favorite, but it is on my bottom tier. Like it just doesn't that time was a really nasty time.
Aggressive.
Uh, super aggressive. I don't like it. I didn't like it then. I really don't like it now. It's like one of those things like in the cyclical nature of like people going back and getting nostalgia. I really hope we avoid early 2000s to 2010 probably.
Yeah, yeah, listen, during this time there was like what? Hot Tension was out, but that was like a good French film. But we had like Wrong Turn, we had Texas Chainsaw Massacre, House of a Thousand Corpses. Like then we had Devil's Rejects. It was a very aggressive time. I don't miss it at all.
No, 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 neither do I. It was mean. Really, it was
Yeah.
just really, really mean.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of that movie, Jason walks out of the body of water he dropped into. I don't know if it's Camp Crystal Lake. I can't remember. But he's holding Freddy's head, and Freddy winks at the camera. So who won? Who won, Mark?
Oh, Jason won.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
I feel listen, like Freddy lost. Like, okay, so let's call it a draw because Freddy wins in the dream world, Jason wins in the real world. So it's a draw. I think that's
Okay.
fair.
Yeah,
But
I think that's fair.
I mean, like, but also Freddy, you're never killing him. Like Jason wins the fight though. Like if you and I are fighting and I can't die, but you still chop off my head and walk away with my head, I lost.
Yeah, because what are you going to do? Get the rest of your body?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Jason wins. I'm saying that Jason wins.
Okay, I agree with that one. Do you know if this movie was actually leading up to Freddy versus Jason versus versus Ash
There
from
was
Evil Dead?
there was talk of it, but I don't think that ever would have come to fruition because as much as I loved Evil Dead, it was never the most lucrative of properties. So it had just been wild fan service at this point. Like I think they would have done another one of these just to make more money. I don't know if Ash would have gotten involved. At least
Yeah,
that's what I think.
yeah. And then I heard a rumor again. I don't know if these are true that they're also thinking about combining it with Pinhead at the end.
Yep. I think they thought about that, but they never did it.
Hmm.
But that could have been pretty interesting.
That could have been pretty interesting. I don't know who would win that. I mean, Pinhead would just like, well, if you're in Pinhead's world, you can't do anything. He'll just trap you.
Yeah,
I mean,
just
he's kind of low key the scariest one for all of it.
he'll just torture you.
Yeah, yeah. It'll just keep you unable to move. Yeah,
Yeah. And you might like it, you might hate it.
it doesn't matter though. Okay, we move to Jason X, the 10th movie, which is out of chronology. Because there's no, actually, I excuse me. Freddy vs. Jason is out of chronology. Jason X takes place or was released in like 2001, 2002.
Yeah, one Jason X is 01. Yeah.
Oh, one. Yeah. And then, okay. So remember, it goes Jason X and then it was Freddy versus Jason. But in world, they're reversed. So in Jason X, there's that time where all like horror places, like, let's go to space. Let's go to space. Leprechaun in space, Jason in space, Hellraiser in space. Everyone's going to space. It's 450 years in the future. And a group of students who are studying, I believe, archaeology, it's like archaeology class, stumble across Earth and they go down to study it. And Earth is a wasteland because of toxins in the air. And they find Jason and someone named Rowan frozen in like a chamber. They bring them both back up to the ship. They revive Rowan, and she's like, "That's Jason. Like you got to get rid of him. He's crazy. He's wild. He'll kill you." They don't because they say his cells can regenerate. Does that make sense from earlier movies when like he could jump bodies? No, it doesn't. Again, don't think about it too hard. So what ends up happening? Jason comes back to life, gets a cool machete upgrade, kills a bunch of people, fights a cyborg who beats him up. He then falls into a medical machine that injects him with nanites, and you have cyber zombie Jason.
Yes. Uber Jason.
Uber Jason really goes by. Uber Jason, who is bigger, meaner, faster. This movie is heavy on the comedy, very, very heavy on the comedy, very campy. Essentially, the teens, what's left of them, trick Jason by putting him in a hologram suite that shows two women, scantily clad women, that he just keeps killing over and over and over. While they get a smaller ship ready, they get on the ship, they blast off, blow Jason up, and Jason shoots through the space heading towards Earth 2 because his franchise can never die. Jason's going to be on Earth 2 ready to murder some people. That
Beautiful.
is the end of the traditional, the normal one, right? The normal franchise. We also have one reboot, and that is Jason is a pot farmer who travels underground. Some people steals his pot, and he kills those people.
And a movie
And
so violent and so full of nudity that Michael Bay didn't like it.
yeah, it is. It is the first part of it's pretty good, and then it just turns into not a good movie after that.
Yeah.
Whoa,
Mm-mm.
Mark, how did I do?
I mean, you did it. We're here. You figured it out. This is great. I mean,
Yeah,
I think everyone who listens to this will be like, okay, I got it. I'm
yeah,
happy.
yeah.
So
And it's a primer. It's a primer because they're gonna do the prequel. The prequel is coming up.
it's his mom. He gets his mask in the third one, becomes a zombie in six, goes to hell,
Goes to
battles,
space.
goes to space, battles Jason or battles Freddy, and then he becomes a pot farmer.
Yeah, that's you just boiled it completely down.
Oh, it makes me so happy. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining me, man. And any final thoughts about the final Friday 13th franchise before we get out of here?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. We I guess we kind of touched on it. This franchise is really divided into two segments. You have vaguely alive Jason, depending on if he's supernatural, and then zombie Jason. And when I was younger, I was really, really into zombie Jason. Zombie Jason was my thing. Now that I've seen this franchise a dozen times, I'm really into normal Jason. Like that's really what I think this series shines. And I want to know what you think.
Zombie Jason.
Zombie Jason. Okay, it's good to disagree on things.
And listen, I
Uh,
just like Jason X a lot. And I think Jason Lives is a lot of fun. And I like watching him getting pinballed in seven. It's just, it just becomes more bonkers and more fun for me, at least. Like, I like the supernatural angle attached to it. Like, when he's just a human slaughtering people, I'm just not into it. But when he becomes a zombie and he just starts getting, just gets pinballed by a woman in the seventh film as a psychic, it's incredible. So I think that's where I have the most fun with it.
so the follow up question there is, I know Blumhouse is trying to do a reboot of this or something. They're trying to get the rights to it, right? The rights are super complicated. There's a prequel coming out, I believe, on Paramount. Either way, if it was up to you, would you do reboot it, try to do like a legacy sequel, or would you keep going from say in continuity from Freddy vs. Jason?
You got to redo it. Just
Mhm.
redo it. Who cares? This isn't. I know, like, there's not much story here. There really isn't much story, and there's not too many legacy characters left. And the last one of these came out in 2003. So I mean, you're not going to bring back characters 20 years later. Jarvis by now, Tommy Jarvis right now is much older. Let's just reboot it. Like, just start a new one. But I think Jason in this time period doesn't work. So I think you gotta like pearl it or X it, put it back in the 70s, 80s, just go again. Just have fun with it. Just but like, unlike the Texas Chainsaw Massacre ones, don't make a movie, then make a prequel, and then make a sequel, and then make a prequel. Like, just have fun with it. Go in order. Like, like keep a Tommy Jarvis in it, right? Like, keep a through line. Always, I think people need to realize something. Like, the Predator franchise works best when it's a Predator movie. Simple, right? It's hunting something. Just remember that you're making a Friday the 13th movie and just make it dumb and fun and gratuitous and just keep it Jason. Don't add too much story. Don't add too much prestige. Keep it indie and just have fun with it. That's what I think they should do.
Now, should they do normal Jason or zombie Jason the reboot
Oh, you got to start with normal Jason.
and turn him into zombie?
Yeah, you got to.
Yeah, that could create really the through line for everything we're looking for, right? Like you can do Jason drowns and then his mother dies and he comes back to life. Like you can do that actually and show it and have a supernatural element, which a series has definitely has.
And listen, don't make him a pot farmer in the first one, right? Like, don't make him a pot farmer. Just make it Jason. Do Jason 2, Jason 3. Shoot, have his mom be the killer in the first one. Like, just redo it all. Horror movies borrow from each other so much. Just do it again.
That's what we want.
Yep, that's what I want. What about you? So, I mean, what do you think?
I really want a regular Jason reboot. I would accept like I think a legacy sequel would be really hard because the first one came out in 1980. So you're looking at I'm not be able to do the math real quick there.
Well, it's
40
43
years.
right now.
Yeah. And that's maybe too much time. I mean, I guess you could do it. They did it with Halloween. But then
Yeah,
it would be like you'd have to have Alice. Alice would be the main character.
and ignore 2. But then that would I don't want it to go Halloween. I don't want it ignoring stuff. I just want it plugging forward. Like, I don't want it ignoring the second film. Like, just don't, no legacy sequels, David. Please.
Yeah.
Please,
Okay.
please.
Okay. Reboot like the first one, have Alice back, maybe drop Tommy in too. So
Yeah.
like build up towards maybe Tommy becomes the killer because that was always the original plan, and actually pay off on that instead of like that'd be pretty good.
Do it. Please. Please. I mean,
Mark,
yeah. No, just give me, this should always be meat and potatoes. I'm sorry. I want my F13 without salt and gravy. I just want it to be F13 and that's it.
that's when it works best.
Yeah, I think
Honestly.
so. Or in
Yeah.
space. Give me all in space.
That movie. It's a
Oh.
lot.
Well, hey, man. Thank you so much for joining me, dude. And do you want to tell people where you're at before we get out of here?
Yeah.
Where
Well,
they can
one,
find
I'm
you?
on this podcast.
Yeah, you
So
are.
I'm here like once a month. Check it out. Like and follow if you don't already. I also have my own podcast. It's called Award Wieners. We watch best picture winning movies and then pair them with a hot dog recipe. I just recorded a podcast on the Great Ziegfeld, which is an early 1930s one. It's a really interesting one. It was about a man who essentially he was a mega producer on Broadway in the early 30s. And it was interesting to see all the history, learn all the history. And that's one thing I would say if you listen to my podcast, you're going to learn a lot of stuff. And that's because that's what we like to talk.
Hot dog recipes and lots of facts. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Mark, what do we have up next?
So we have, well, we got, let's see, we have episodes for The Mummy Returns. We have Piranha. We have Deep Star 6. And then we're jumping into an Insidious franchise. 1, 2, 3,
I'm
4, 5 episodes.
Yeah, I'm very excited for the Insidious franchise. I think it's gonna be great. I
Super
also,
pumped.
Mark, I don't think it's the last Insidious. I think they're gonna do a sixth one.
I mean, it made 186 million. Like, come on. Just
Yeah,
give me another
yeah,
Elise prequel.
yeah. Something's gonna happen. I'm just saying.
I mean, they're not going anywhere. Like, they know how to deal with it, but it's still there. So, it's Insidious 6, the further warriors instead of the dream warriors. Do that.
I love it. I
all right.
love it.
Well, listen, man, this was awesome, and I appreciate you joining me. So, thank you. So, for me, Mark Hoffmeyer, for David Cross, this is Movies, Films, and Flicks. We'll see you next week.